Hello, in this video I will be comparing the Sirui Anamorphic 24, 35, and 50mm lenses to a 12 to 60mm kit lens, a 17.5mm Voigtlander lens, and an SLR Magic 2X 35mm anamorphic lens. This comparison is strictly for comparing the framing and field of view of each of these lenses. Now this was done at nighttime to show off the nice flares. However, the lighting is not great, which is why I have the ISO bumped up really high. And what this comparison is not, is it is not a comparison on focal distance, nor is it a comparison on bokeh, though you will see some of that in here, and again the nice flares, but mostly this is about the framing of each focal length and how the aspherical lens is compared to the anamorphic lenses, and even how the 35mm SLR Magic compares to the 35mm Sirui lens. So in these first four examples I will be standing in one place, and in the first clip I will be using the Voigtlander 17.5mm lens. This is one of my favorite lenses that I own with the GH5. I love this lens. It's one of the most versatile lenses that I have for video. The next will be the Sirui 24mm lens, and you can see that while the field of view is similar, the aspect ratio has changed. Since the Voigtlander was a wider lens, this lens is actually, we're getting more information on the sides at a longer focal length. Here is an example of the 35mm anamorphic lens from Sirui, and now the 50mm lens from Sirui. So now I've stepped closer to the lantern, and these next three examples will be moving shots. And as you can see, this is the 24mm from Sirui. Then we'll move on to the 35mm from Sirui. And last, the 50mm anamorphic from Sirui. And again, in all three of these shots, I am standing in the exact same spot. And now, standing in the same position, I'm going to compare all four of these lenses once again. The Voigtlander 17.5, the 24mm Sirui, the 35mm Sirui, and the 50mm Sirui. And this shot has some nice bokeh and some nice lens flares. Now we're going to take a look at the SLR Magic 2x squeeze 35mm anamorphic lens. That's quite a lot to say. The Sirui anamorphic lenses have a 1.33 squeeze. Since this is a 2x squeeze, the width will go off the edges of the 2.40 to 1 aspect ratio. So if we zoom out a little bit, this is what it would look like. And then zoom back in. It's a really heavy lens. It's huge. Now I'm really liking the flares that I'm getting off of it. Looks like it has some nice bokeh, but there is a lot of distortion on the edges. Now I'm just going to step a little bit closer to this, but you're going to see we have this focused as close as we can get, and it's not quite there. That's about where we need it to be, about as close as we can get. And I mean, which is not bad. This is a wide angle lens, and it's a couple feet away, and that's to be expected on an anamorphic lens like this. It does have some unique properties to the flare. I like the flare, but this is a beast to carry around. And compared to the other lenses, you know, this is so wide, there's not a lot of you know, uses other than, not a lot of other uses I can find for this other than, you know, establishing shots. Since the SLR Magic has a 2x squeeze, it's actually recorded a little bit differently on the GH5. It uses the full micro four thirds sensor, so the entire 4x3 sensor. So you'll actually be getting higher resolution on the SLR Magic. Now if you see here, this represents the micro four thirds sensor. The orange is what the SLR Magic would be recording, and the green is what all the other lenses I am using are recording on. They are recording on the 16:9 aspect ratio on the sensor. So let's put those side by side, or top and bottom. The Sirui 35mm lens versus the SLR 35mm lens. And this is straight out of camera what it would look like without being de-squeezed. Now we'll go ahead and de-squeeze it. Okay, and let's take another look at that. Next, we will do a comparison of the kit lens that this camera came with, which is a 12x60, to the Sirui Anamorphic lenses. And I think you're going to notice a big difference quality-wise between these two sets of lenses. So this is at 12. This is about 24. And let's pop this up to 32 ISO. 6400 ISO. And now let's go up to 50. Now let's take a side-by-side comparison look at the kit lens with the Sirui lenses. So some final thoughts after using this, testing these out once. I think these lenses are incredible, and I should say that Sirui is not paying me to say this at all. In fact, I actually purchased these lenses myself with their Indiegogo. They did not send these lenses to me. I bought these myself, and same with all the equipment that you've seen used. Now, I think the SLR Magic is a great lens. It is really big, and which is to be expected from an anamorphic lens. It is very pricey. It's actually relatively, it's very inexpensive for an anamorphic lens. But at the price of that one lens, and I would love to try out their other lenses. I believe they have I want to say 50mm lens and also a 85mm lens on SLR Magic. I would love to try those out, but again, they're so pricey. For the price of one of those lenses, I got all three of these Sirui lenses. And so I don't know if there's some sort of hack that Sirui has figured out, just to, if they built these up saying, hey, you know what, instead of making this an anamorphic lens in the traditional sense, let's just make a lens that will have all the characteristics of an anamorphic lens. I don't know if that's what they did. It's hard to imagine that they were able to get such a small lens that's easy to use, that is sharp, has little distortion, but has a lot of the aspects and attributes you're looking for in an anamorphic lens. In this small package for this small price, it's unbelievable. And honestly, if it is some sort of hack or way they figured out how to do this that isn't a true anamorphic in the traditional sense, I'm okay with that, because again, the price is so affordable and it gets you the look. A great look in these lenses that you're looking for in an anamorphic set of lenses. And so I think they are absolutely fantastic. And I mean, I've only used them once, If you're into anamorphic style of filming, I would definitely recommend them. They're much easier and more portable to use than, say, the SLR Magic. But again, the SLR Magic has its, its perks too. It does have the distortion and you know that. I don't want to quite say lack of sharpness, but sometimes that's actually more associated with anamorphic lenses, and so they're it's just a different style to these lenses. So I wouldn't knock the SLR Magic, but I would say the Sirui is definitely much easier to use, especially for a smaller crew. So. And at the time that I'm making this video, I think they have just a few days, maybe just a couple days left on their Indiegogo. I would still check it out though, follow them, because there's been a lot of people asking for an 85mm anamorphic lens, so I'm sure there's another lens coming at some point that you're not going to want to miss. And it's, you can get usually a pretty good deal on these lenses, or a set of these lenses on their Indiegogo. So definitely recommend that. And again, this was a very, limited test. I would love to do a daylight test, and also, maybe an indoor test with lights and things like that. This wasn't a test on focusing the lens or, image sharpness. I think there's plenty of those out there, but I thought it might be useful to have a test on framing and field of view. So I hope you enjoyed this. If you did, please, if you found this useful at all, give it a thumbs up, like this video, subscribe. And I know we went through a lot here without me giving a ton of information. Let me know in the comments if you have any questions about this test, or about the lenses, or what you would like to see in a future test video. And thanks for watching and making it this far. I'll see you next time.